joining us, host of the Bulwark podcast, and MS Now political analyst Tim Miller, former Republican governor of North Carolina Pat McCrory, MS Now senior White House reporter Vaughn Hilliard, and MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin, because there's a legal angle to this. Okay, Vaughn, is the White House really concerned about Saturday?
Absolutely. I mean, look at the event production that we have seen over the course of the last week and the National Mall. And there are serious questions that when you're looking at 100-degree temperatures on Saturday, you're looking at the reality that because the president wants to deliver a primetime speech at 9 p.m., which is usually when the fireworks go off on the National Mall every year, that they're looking at a 2-hour delay of the fireworks not starting until 11 p.m. And the fact is that because the president is going to be there, there is going to be a U.S. Secret Service apparatus that is large, one that is going to require folks to go through magnetometers to get into the event and be out in the sunlight for all those hours. There are questions about families, whether they are going to come out. Typically, the National Mall is a welcoming event annually for folks across the greater D.C. area, people that fly in from out of town. But I was talking to one person who is very familiar with the production team that is a part of this, and they put it to me very skeptically, believing that this is going to look like a typical Trump rally, that only the most loyal supporters of the president are going to be coming to this event. He has made this an overtly political event. Initially, a commission was started back in 2016, a bipartisan one on Capitol Hill, passed through legislation to fund and ultimately plan and coordinate these types of commemorative events. But there was another organization, an outside, effectively a political arm with Trump allies named Freedom 250 that ultimately hired the firms behind this event and are the ones orchestrating it. And you have Donald Trump himself saying that this is going to be the biggest political Trump rally yet, at the same time that they're planning a fireworks show that is going to be 10 times that of a normal National Mall fireworks show, which health experts are telling us at MS Now they have deep concerns over the health and concerns that it could cause for older folks, for folks that with asthma. So there is a lot at play here coming into Saturday, one in which there's deep questions about exactly what that crowd will look like for the president come Saturday night.
All right, let's play Donald Trump talking about how he's going to battle the heat. This is him from yesterday.
On July 4th, it's going to be approximately 107 degrees out. And I'm going to go and I'm going to make a really long speech just to show that I can do anything.
Tim, when he said that, I immediately thought of the drunk history of William Henry Harrison. The story, yeah. I mean, that TV show was really funny, but just the story of what happened to him when he gave his inaugural speech. He wanted to prove that he was still tough. He was 68 years old. He was old, for the time at least. And he didn't wear a coat, and it was very cold, snowy and rainy. And about 30 days later, he succumbed to illness and died. One of the shortest presidencies that we've ever had in this country, or the shortest presidency. It does just like there's all the times where Donald Trump is just fighting against an uncomfortable parallel in history, and here's another one of them.
Well, this presidency has been a lot longer than that one, and it feels even longer. Here we are talking about it. He's talking at like 9:50 at night, so it's not going to be at the peak of the day in the heat. We'll see. I think the bigger question is, who wants to go hear a really long Trump speech on the 4th of July night at America 250? I mean, even some of the biggest Trump fans, you would wonder, wouldn't many of them rather just watch it on their big screen and go out and set off sparklers and hang out with their friends in the air conditioning? And, it just seems extremely unappealing. This is what happens when you're a megalomaniac. He only thinks about himself. The original idea for this was that there's going to be a lot of musicians and fanfare, and it would be a moment to remember the history of the country. And you can understand why people might want to do that and like bring their kids to it and kind of experience it. He changed it from that to being a Trump rally. It's going to be really hot. It's going to be really late at night. He says it's going to be long. That's his pitch. I think it's going to be pretty empty.
Let me play folks that have been going to this Great American Fair. We're showing some images of it right now, and how their visit has been.
What brings you to the 250th State Fair?
We got married in 1976, so it's 50 years tomorrow. So,
Are you surprised about how empty it is at all, or no?
well, a little bit. Remembering back to the 1976, this place was a mob, you know, and
That fair was packed,
yes,
and it was here on the mall?
yeah. Yeah, in 1976, it was great. There are a lot of people that aren't coming for whatever reason, you know, but it's come down here. It's only going to be 251s.
And what do you think of it so far?
Great, great. I love it.
Are you a little bit surprised that it's this empty?
Yes. I'm surprised it's a little empty, but
I saw you looking at the arch, the Triumph Arch. What do you think of it?
I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope
neat.
it gets built.
Yeah, so some people, there and wanting it to be fuller. I've been to a lot of state fairs. When you cover political campaigns, you end up going to state fairs. Governor, I know you've been to your share of them yourself. Is this a state fair?
No, well, 3 quick points. I agree with all the points that have been made. But first of all, we miss the Beach Boys. We need the Beach Boys on 4th of July. But we've lost Brian Wilson. Second, we're competing against the World Cup. I think the World Cup has taken over 4th of July 250. That is the number one thing on people's mind right now, soccer in America. And third, kind of sarcastically but half serious, I think maybe people think they have to buy Bitcoin or crypto to get in, because Washington, sadly, has been taken over by the crypto industry, not just the Trump White House, but all of Congress, both Republicans and Democrats. They're the largest donor to Washington politicians right now in Washington, D.C., over every other industry. And that's a sad commentary on the state of Washington right now, and both political parties and the Trump White House.
Well, there's plenty of reason to be worried about that. I mean, we have news, and Lisa, you can report this out, about Democrats alleging fraud about how the money was raised for this.
Yeah,
I think it's a fair... I'm sorry.
Hold on, Governor. Let Lisa explain it first.
Katie, there are some Democrats who have released a report today from the Hill explaining that there were folks who wanted to be donors to the original bipartisan commission set up in honor of the 250th America 250. But when they expressed that they wanted to make those contributions, they were given routing numbers and other information to direct their donations instead to the nonprofit organization set up by the Trump administration, Freedom 250. And you'll note that today, when asked about this, the White House didn't quite deny it. Instead, what they did was dump all over America 250, saying that it had become bloated and inefficient, that they had spent a bunch of money since its establishment in 2016 for naught, and therefore that they had to essentially replace it with a better organization. The problem, of course, being that it's not clear that all of the ways in which Freedom 250 is spending its money are, in fact, nonpartisan, as is required of any federal 501c3 organization, the kinds of organizations we know traditionally as nonprofits. So not only is there a component of potential deception of those who wanted to donate to the bipartisan commission, there's also the question raised by Vaughn's reporting of what is this organization actually doing with its money, and is it fulfilling the federal mandate applicable to tax-exempt organizations that they remain steadfastly nonpartisan?